you kind of get access to hidden knowledge or experiences that you don't remember you had. As your boy experiences those things, you kind of get to experience them through him.
Yeah, I think, to your point, there's just something, being able to empathize with another person is just enormously helpful. And it is just a fact that certain experiences are kind of unique to your sex or your gender, and certain experiences, like when you can have some guidance from someone who knows what that is like, there's going to be something about that is enormously helpful to you.
Welcome back to Raising Men. I'm your host, Sean Dawson. Now, we often talk on this show about the missing roadmap for modern manhood, the fact that our sons are growing up in a world that sends them loud, often contradictory messages about what it means to be a man. But today's guest has maybe a slightly different point of view, which I'm really eager to get into. Jordan Ritter Conn is a senior staff writer at The Ringer, and he's an acclaimed author known for his deep immersion journalism. For his latest book, American Men, Jordan spent 5 years almost living alongside 4 very different men, capturing the searing intimacy of their lives, of their failures, and their triumphs. Now, he kind of argues that these men have gotten the message of what it means to be a man loud and clear, but the difficulty arises when they're confronted with the ways that they don't feel like they're living up to the ideal that they're holding in their own heads. And the result of this book is, I think, a result of genuine, intimate storytelling. And like most stories, it gets to the truth in a way that data and statistics can't. Jordan, thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to Raising Men.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so thrilled to be here, Sean.
So now, how did you decide to embark on this journey? This was 5 years ago. And I think 5 years ago, the vision of, doing something on masculinity was, most people, if you told that to, they would think that you're on a different journey than you actually ended up on. So how did you decide to do this, and how do you feel about it?
Yeah. So, I have always had, going back to, when I was a kid, always had very close relationships with other boys and with men in my adulthood. The kind of friendships that we're often told that boys and men don't have, or can't develop. Friendships that are based on, real trust and intimacy, really sharing things vulnerably. And that kind of carried over into my journalism. Once I became a journalist, I kind of focused on, like you said, kind of like immersive storytelling, like really digging deep into people's lives. And, a lot of my background is in sports. And so if you're in sports journalism, you spend a lot of time talking to men.
Yeah.
And the kind of journalism that I've done, it's a lot of time talking to men about things that we're so often told that men don't really want to share, talking with them about their insecurities, talking with them about their failures, talking with them about, traumas. And so, a few years ago, and at this point, it's now been 6 years since I really kind of embarked on beginning this book, just because some time has passed since I finished it now. I was just thinking, like, there's starting to be these conversations around men about, you'd see these headlines about, like, the first rumblings of headlines about male loneliness in kind of the late 2010s, like 2018, 19, 20. You'd see the first rumblings of headlines about men kind of sometimes not carrying their emotional weight, I guess, in relationships. You start hearing, like, the terms like emotional labor start kind of being introduced into the way that we talk culturally. You start to hear things about men's unwillingness to, seek professional help when they're going through things, and to, to open up, let people into their lives. And I just had the thought of, like, I've spent a lot of my personal life and now a lot of my professional life talking to men about these very things, I feel like I've had experiences that have led me to think that men are willing to open up, are willing to kind of let people in, do want to um, kind of do some of this work that we're so often told that they don't. And so I thought, like, if I could cast a wide net, find a few guys whose stories are so different from one another, but who could add up to something kind of a larger picture, outside of just their individual stories, that I could have something. I could have a book that people might be really interested in and drawn to. Certainly, when I started this process, the conversation around this stuff was very different than it is now. The conversation has gotten louder and louder and louder over the course of those 5-6 years. But I felt even back then like there would be a hunger for something like this.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right, and I think you I think you've proven your point there. One of the things that really struck me in hearing you talk about this is that there is this conception that men are not willing to talk about their feelings. And you started this endeavor with just totally rejecting that. And when I heard you talking about that, it occurred to me. I realized, yeah, the deal isn't that men don't want to open up and talk about that stuff. And nor is it the case that they're not capable of talking about it. It's that they do not have safe spaces in which it's possible to talk about it without being judged, without having maybe serious social repercussions or that sort of thing. What do you think
Yeah.
about? Give me your response to that.
Yeah. I think that the real key is, yeah, a couple things. We um need to feel like the other person is genuinely curious, need to feel like the other person really wants to know. And so that often means we need to be asked things pretty directly. I mean, we need to be given like kind of a permission structure for opening up, because we do kind of inherit these messages that's showing any kind of vulnerability or openness is showing weakness. And to be honest with you, our culture often associates any sense of weakness with femininity, and
Yeah.
our culture as men, we learn these really lessons that kind of harm us all, that teach us to kind of reject femininity from the time we're very, very young. But I think that we need to really be invited in to these kind of conversations, and be given that kind of direct permission to open up. But then also, I do think we need a sense that, and this is what I could offer to these guys, like you said, that there's a fear of being judged. And what I could offer to these guys who I write about in this book is like, I really want to know. I'm going to ask you these very direct questions. I want to know the answers, and they would show me a little bit, and I don't judge them. Then they show me a little bit more, and I don't judge them, and then they show me a lot more. And I do think that there is often this fear that if anyone really sees me, uh, they will think less of me. If anyone really sees me, they will judge me. If it is another man, they might find me to be weak or lacking in some way. If it is a woman, there might be parts of my experience that they can't fully relate to or understand, that they find to be either weak or lacking, similarly, or just bad. Like some part of me is not good. And I think that's a fear that we all have. None of us want to be seen by, especially by people that we care about, as any of those things. And so we need to be able to feel like, the person just really, really wants to know, and is going to take what we say and kind of integrate it into the way that they view us, that is already kind of wanting the best for us and caring for us, and not kind of change the way they view us in a way that is, that feels harmful and hurtful.
Yeah, you begin the story of Jordan with this detailed breakdown of this obsession that he has while he's driving across the country with his wife, of the temperature of the car as they're driving
Yeah.
through Yellowstone.
Joseph.
I think is my
Joseph is
recollection. And so they're driving across country so that he can go to law school, and he's sitting there obsessing over the fact that the temperature of his car is like 30 degrees higher than it has been for the rest of the drive. And he's worried that the car's going to break down. And then, oh my gosh, we don't have enough money to afford a new engine if that happens. And what do I do? And I can't let her drive, because if she drives, then she's going to notice this stuff. And then she's going to realize that I'm not suited to be a protector or a provider and all of this stuff. And I think that experience, meanwhile, his wife is enjoying, the sights and wanting to stop at every single possible thing. This is the first time it's the only time maybe they're going to drive all the way across country, and she's really enjoying the trip, but he can't be present because he doesn't feel like he's a successful protector or provider. And that little story, that vignette, which is the how we get introduced to Jordan, really resonated with me. And I mean, this is my experience in life too. And I think it will resonate. I think it resonates with most men as well. And I think that really illustrates what I think that you're trying to say about the central theme of the book, that there's this gap between this ideal we hold in our heads about what true masculinity is, whatever we've absorbed from the culture about that. And then there's a gap between what I am. And that gap can really grow into something unhealthy if we're not honest about it. And if we're not willing to let people inspect it, or we're not able to let people see it in a safe way, it can really grow into something unhealthy. And that's kind of the nature of a lot what I've been calling a masculinity crisis. But I think I think you're getting to really the root of it there.
Yeah, so that opening with Joseph
Joseph, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no, quite all right. But I'm so glad you brought it up, because that's a scene that I actually haven't really had the chance to talk much about yet. And it's a scene it's one of my favorite scenes in the book. And like you said, he's should be having the time of his life. He and his wife are on this incredible cross-country road trip. They're driving through Yellowstone. They're seeing just all the amazing beauty that this country has to offer. His wife is having a wonderful time. She's looking out the window. She's like telling him to look at all the beautiful things that they're seeing. She's excited to see all the animals they're going to see at Yellowstone National Park. And he is spiraling inside because there's just a light rattle in the engine of his car. And as you know, I think a lot of people have had experiences similar to this, where there's something going on with your car, or maybe it's some like sound in your house that that's not supposed to sound like that, and you quickly go to what is the worst case scenario here. And so he goes from the engine's running a little hot, there's a little bit of a rattle, to this sense of like, we're going to be stranded and alone. And what's underneath all of this is she cannot know what is happening, because if she knows, then she will know the truth. And the truth is, I am insufficient. I cannot keep her safe. She needs someone who can keep her safe, and I am not the man who is up to that job. And so that fear, I think, is something that so many of us experience at some point in time. This fear that if we are really seen, if we are really understood, then people will know the truth, and the truth is that we are deficient in some way. And so he's going through that all the while. Again, she's having an amazing time. He is missing out on having an amazing time with her, because he is so fixated on his like image of his own, this evidence of his own kind of inadequacy. And then, like you said, to the point of kind of this, the book does not try to convince you of many ideas. It does not try to kind of hit you over the head with kind of a grand argument about kind of the state of masculinity in this country. I'm much more interested in just like really intimately telling these 4 stories and letting the reader come away with whatever it is that they come away with. But the one kind of idea that does really link these 4, and that I do think we all experience, is the sense of, from the time we're so young, we are inheriting an idea of what it means to be a man, and what kind of an ideal version of a man is supposed to look like. And at some point along the way, we inevitably fail to live up to that. You can be the 5-year-old on the playground who's getting picked on and who immediately knows I'm not like the other boys, and it has that lesson ingrained in you for such a young age. Or you can be someone who typifies every single ideal, who is the star athlete, who is rich, who is successful, who is attractive, who has everything, but inevitably at some point in your life your circumstances are going to shift in a way where you are no longer kind of living up to that, or you just realize that you've been chasing the standard and the standard only gets higher and higher and higher the higher you go, and you can never quite reach it. And so ultimately, I think what kind of defines our relationship to masculinity is how we kind of navigate that failure. I think that there's a lot of messaging right now that tells young men, just if you just work harder, if you just keep pressing forward, if you just work on your body, if you just work on your career, if you just work on your charisma, then you will bridge that gap and your deficiencies will be gone. And I think working on yourself in those ways is wonderful. I try to
Yeah.
do that all the time. But I do think that seeing that as kind of a path to, it's a path to like trying to bridge something that cannot really ever be bridged
Yeah.
because that
It's
standard is always going to be out of
it's like
reach.
anorexia.
Exactly. Yes, 100%. I haven't heard that comparison, but that makes so much sense. And the both kind of the ideas that fuel anorexia and the ideals that fuel a lot of what we're talking about are just so prevalent online, and so easy for young people to access, and it can really distort kind of your sense of yourself. Basically, with this book, what I wanted to do was kind of explore the ways that these guys who are so different from one another um, try to navigate that, because I think it is something that we will all at one point or another have to navigate ourselves. Most of us have at some point already had to navigate it ourselves, even if we haven't really been conscious of it. It's just been something that we're inevitably doing.
You have a young son yourself who was born while you were doing this.
Yeah.
How has this experience shape how you think about him and his relationship to masculinity? Has it changed the way you think about this stuff or enhanced it in any way?
Yeah, so he's almost 3 years old, and so he's still so young,
Yeah.
and he's still in the very early stages of kind of learning some of these lessons, learning some of the ways in which he will experience certain pressures, as he grows older. I will say that when he was born, and again, he was born, I was about halfway through this book. We did not know the sex until the moment he was born, and the moment that the doctor said like he's here, I think the doctor's first words were he's so long, because he's very tall. um, and but hearing that word he, I felt this incredible like excitement, pride, but also a sense of weight, like an immediate sense of weight,
Uh,
a weight that I can't really fully even like wrap my mind around or put much in the way of words to just yet. But like this sense of a particular kind of responsibility that I would have, and maybe it would have felt the exact same if he, if she had said she's so long, at that moment. But I did kind of feel that, and along the way it has been, I think what I've found myself thinking is like I cannot fully shield him from all of these pressures that we are talking about. Like
yeah.
these pressures are going to be a part of his life. What I can do is do everything I can to make kind of our relationship and our home a place where he feels safe to be whoever he is, and where he feels kind of invited into kind of the fullest version of himself. But he will inevitably be shaped by all of these kind of cultural expectations that we have. He will inevitably be shaped in some ways by like the subconscious ways in which I've been impacted by all of this. I'm my own person who has tried to kind of like navigate that gap that we are talking about, and as much as I try to do it in the healthiest way I can, I know sometimes it's not always healthy, and the ways in which I wrestle with my own kind of insecurities, my own kind of failures will inevitably impact him in some way or another. And so yeah, all of that to say, like, these ideas are just kind of swimming in my mind all the time. And the only thing I know to do at this point, and again, like parenting a 2.5-year-old is very, very different. I know from parenting a 7-year-old or a 10-year-old or a 15-year-old. But at this point, it's just been about like wanting to make sure that he feels like he can be fully himself
Yeah.
with me and with us and in our home.
Yeah, for me, I had that. I had a similar experience to you. Now, we did know the sex of our boy before he came out, and our girl too. But that weight that you're talking
Mhm,
about is totally different, and it's
mhm,
not. It's different. It's not like it's there for the boy and not for the girl.
yeah,
It is different. For the girl, it's more about keeping her safe
mm,
and those sorts of things. For the boy, for me, it was this experience that and actually, I mean, I was able to form it a little bit better once he got older, but
mhm,
it's that masculinity is so much different now than it was when I was young.
mhm,
My paradigm, my operating system, so to speak, is not going to work for him.
hmm,
And it's my job to make sure that he has the skills and capabilities to make his way in the world and be an excellent man.
mhm,
And e- if even if that's what I am, what got me to where I am isn't going to get him where he needs to be. And
yeah,
I need to be more intentional about it. I need to figure it out. And I don't know the answer right now.
hmm,
And the culture isn't going to help me. It used to be the case that we had rites of passage and we had institutions. We would be going to church, and that would help in some way. It would also hurt in a lot of ways, and that means there's an opportunity there and there's a problem there. The problem is that those things are gone. The
mhm,
opportunity is we get to remake them in the form that we want them to be, and that's great, but it means you have to do it or else you're just getting nothing.
yeah,
And that is how I vocalize the weight that you described, that I felt
mhm.
when my son was born. That's what I felt. And I wasn't able to put words to it for years and years and years, but that's how I put words to it now.
Yeah, that's such a great yeah, I really appreciate you sharing all of that because like I think that um like you said, I think one of the things that comes up a lot in this book is how men respond to certain structures, how we
Yeah.
respond to like clear sets of expectations, and being invited into something that where there's kind of a clear purpose, and we understand what it is, we understand why we're doing it, and um what you mentioned about kind of rites of passage or like structures that kind of give serve as like kind of entry points into a next phase of life that serve as like kind of helping you make that transition in adolescence from being someone who is seen largely as a boy into being someone who's growing into a man. I think that like you're right that our culture is kind of lacking a lot of those. I'm not entirely sure how to kind of reconstitute some of them, but I do think that they matter because I think especially that phase of life. I mean, adolescence. I try to I think it can be hard sometimes for grown men to remember what it is like to be a teenage boy. And I have a hard time kind of remembering what it was like. And I found myself thinking, trying to really sink back into that experience. And I think like, when I was a teenager, um, I'm really tall. I'm 6'5". So
Me
I'm
too.
like always okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So like it's a particular kind of experience when you are in a body like that that's kind of
Yeah.
looming over everyone else.
And I was
Um,
clumsy as a result
yeah,
of
me
having
too,
grown
me
so
too,
fast, and yeah. My
me
my
too.
boy experiences the same thing, and it's difficult because, and you're going to experience the same thing. They always think he's older than he is, and
Uh-huh.
so they expect him to act differently. They're like, "Why is your 9-year-old acting like a
Yeah,
6-year-old?" Well, he's
yeah.
6.
6, yeah.
People are always
It's yeah,
surprised.
my son physically he's so much like me. He's very, very tall,
Yeah,
but just kind of clumsy. Like,
yeah.
it took him like I think babies are supposed to start rolling over when they're like 3 months. He was like 9 months before he rolled over.
Hard.
Like he
There's so much
never
body.
crawled.
There's so much
Yeah.
body to learn to maneuver. It's like driving a semi truck versus a Miata.
Exactly, exactly. But back to kind of the point of like in adolescence, like what I remember is like you are growing into a feeling of like you all of a sudden there's just a power. There is a power that comes with being in a male body, particularly a certain kind of male body, one
Yeah,
that's kind of larger than other people.
yeah. Physical
There's
power.
just an
Yeah,
intrinsic power that comes with that, and like you are growing into that power very, very quickly when you are 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 years old. And it can feel intoxicating. It can feel really, really thrilling to all of a sudden be bigger than most of the people who are around you, and everything that kind of comes with that, the expectations that come with that. But it can also feel terrifying, like terrifying. And I remember like being around, just around a lot of I knew a lot of boys who did bad stuff, who inflicted real harm on other people. And sometimes they were boys who I was really close to and who, I saw a lot of like goodness in a lot of other ways. But like, there's something about that I think really kind of, there's just so much swimming in my head at that period of time where like you're seeing the destructive power that kind of, the people who have bodies like yours can have. You're also kind of intoxicated by the ways in which you suddenly have like access to so much that you didn't have access to when you were younger. And so I do think that like whatever we can do to find ways to help teenage boys to kind of navigate that time of life, like understand all that they're going to be going through. I mean, the parallels to adolescent girls, that there's obviously like a very clear rite of passage that happens for them, that's kind of a distinction between kind of a
right.
girlhood
Yeah,
and
it's a
growing
physical
into, yeah.
thing. Yeah,
Yes. And I spoke when working on this book. I talked to a woman journalist friend who, talked about that specifically and was like, I feel like, girls still kind of like there's just this physical change of having a period that is, uh, gives them kind of a passageway into womanhood that boys are kind of lacking. And so I think that stuff is important, and finding ways to kind of help boys to navigate a time in your life that can feel so chaotic, and where you can feel so unmoored, is helpful. I don't know what the answer is, but I love that it's something that you're thinking a lot about.
I'll tell you something that helps. And one of the things that I've noticed about my boy's experience is I can watch him go through things, and that will uncover memories for me that I didn't
Mhm.
wouldn't have been able to produce if I hadn't been prompted by seeing him struggle with the same stuff. And
Yeah.
when I see that, I remember back when I struggled with the same stuff and how I thought about it and how I wished I'd thought about it and all of that stuff. And so all of that's to say that this is one of the reasons that male role models are so important in the life of young boys, and
Mhm.
especially adolescent boys, because that is such a
Yeah.
difficult, unbelievably hard time of life. It's for all the reasons that you talked about. And he really needs someone there who's been through that, maybe more,
Yeah.
even more than other people, and who can, you know, say, yeah, this is normal and it's okay. And just as a girl having her first period needs a woman to help her learn how to deal with that just in a physical way. I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
think anybody like I don't think anybody would expect a father to come and do that, or think that a father could do that adequately.
Sure.
And yet we don't really necessarily culturally put that onus on men to make sure that they're there for the boys in the same way. And but it really does help. Like, you kind of get access to hidden knowledge or experiences that you don't remember you had. As your boy experiences those things, you kind of get to experience them through him, vicariously.
Yeah.
The trip.
Yeah. I think, to your point, there's just something, I mean, being able to empathize with another person is just enormously helpful. I mean, like
Yeah.
having someone who can see and understand your experience is enormously helpful. And it is just a fact that certain experiences are kind of unique to your sex or your gender, and certain experiences, like when you can have some guidance from someone who knows what that is like, there's going to be something about that is enormously helpful to you. And that's not to say that men can't find ways to be there for their daughters who are going through kind of physical and other changes that those men haven't experienced, or that women can't do the same with their sons, or other children in their lives. But it is just simply like there will be things that I know that I experience things that, like, I wanted to talk to my dad about, because I knew that, like, he was much more
Yeah.
likely to have understood that experience
Yeah.
than my mom. And I think that, the onus has to be on us as fathers to make sure that we are there in that way, to make sure that we are looking for those moments where there are those points of connection, where we have been through that thing that a boy is going through, and we can kind of find ways to really signal that we're there and able to talk about it and understand.
Yeah. Yeah. What did you learn in the experience of writing this book? What did you learn about the role of these men's own parents in crafting who they became, like in making their struggles harder or easier, or successes greater or lesser, or how did their parents impact that?
Yeah. Their fathers are so different from one another.
Yeah.
One, Joseph, who we talked about earlier, the one who's having the bit of a breakdown on the beautiful cross country road trip. His father is um really abusive to Joseph's mother. Never abusive to Joseph himself, but he grows up in a home where he watches violence unfolding often, and it fills him with pretty significant kind of loathing for his father over time. And
Yeah.
he learns a lot, really. He's a bit adrift at times, because he does not have a real strong model for who he wants to be himself. He's kind of seeking that in other men in his life as he's in early adulthood, because his father failed his mother in such critical ways. Another one, Gideon, who is kind of a typifies every masculine ideal, like the baseball star, West Point graduate, tall, smart, handsome, everything. He has a loving relationship to his father, but also had this sense that he was like kind of like a trophy in his
Yeah.
family, that he was, because he was so good at all of these things, because he was so gifted. He kind of internalized that, like, this is how I have worth in the world, is by being excelling at all of these things. And no, I think he's to this day would say that his parents loved him tremendously and were great in many ways, but it was hard for him to kind of trust kind of his intrinsic, I guess, worth,
Mm.
in part for kind of the ways that he was kind of reinforced as a kid. Another, Ryan, is someone who is, his father is kind of your stereotypical, like, tough, like, fighter, like someone who's he'd been a boxer. And Ryan gets picked on as a kid, and his dad is immediately tries to teach him how to fight.
I
And
That
Ryan.
scene is incredible, and I remember I'm reading this scene and thinking, "That's exactly what I would do
Hmm,
if, as the dad.
yeah,
If I was that dad, I would do that exact same. All right, we're not gonna let that happen again." And
yeah.
then seeing that experience through Ryan's eyes, such a beautiful. It's really really a great story.
Well, thank you. But what's so fascinating about it is like in the moment, so Ryan doesn't want that. Ryan wants his dad to
Yeah.
comfort him, to hold him, to care for him. But then what happens is Ryan continues getting bullied. He doesn't really ever learn to fight back until he is in college, and we meet him as a young man, and on the night when he snaps and he beats somebody up.
Yeah.
And he finds, oh, I actually really like doing this. And he likes it in a way that is not really purely out of self-defense. He likes it in a way that's quite destructive. But he later, like in early adulthood, like kind of is like bragging to his dad, that his dad, who had kind of put these boxing gloves on his fists when he was a little boy and tried to teach him how to fight. And he's trying to brag to his dad, like, hey, like I've been getting into some fights lately. Like you should see what I'm doing to these guys. And his dad, who's now encountering his son as a grown man, is like, what are you doing? Why are you so stupid? Why would you be getting into these fights? And it like does not compute in Ryan's brain, because all he remembers is being this little boy who his dad was trying to
Yeah.
teach how to fight. And so I think that's just a case where like what one thing about fatherhood is that like every father brings to the table their own stuff, their own insecurities, their
Yeah.
own kind of feelings that they're kind of projecting onto their kid. And I don't know exactly what was going through Ryan's father's mind at that moment when he's trying to teach him how to fight, but like it was a moment where he felt like I need to teach my boy how to fight back. And then later, when learning that his boy has grown into a man who does fight back, he goes to a place that a lot of parents go, which is like, you shouldn't be hitting people. That's bad.
Yeah. And what a mix, man. And I thought another little aspect of that story that, I mean, it's just this tiny little vignette, and yet it was so, um, it was really impactful to me, which is you kind of get into the mind of the father for a moment,
Mhm.
where the father is kind of teaching the son to fight, not so that, not just so that he'll be protected,
Yeah.
but also because the father feels a little bit ashamed that his son got beat up.
Yeah, at least that's how Ryan kind of took it. At
Yeah,
least
yeah,
that's how
that was,
he
I mean,
felt
Ryan
about
doesn't
it.
know, but that's
Yeah,
what
yeah.
he thinks. Yeah,
Um, and I think that that's like it's such a natural impulse
yeah,
for any parent to internalize like uh any struggle that your kid might have is somehow a reflection on you in a negative way. And like
mhm,
the things that we value and the things that feel like embarrassing to us are often going to be different from the things that our kids value and that feel embarrassing to them.
yep,
And so we yeah, can have so much of our own identity wrapped up in and those sorts of things. And again, the flip side of that is Gideon, the kind of star athlete whose parents are just so over the moon thrilled with him all the time because of the fact that he's accomplishing so much, while at the same time he's not necessarily learning what he needs to learn to be kind of a fully a man who can have like a full, robust, fulfilling kind of life, because he's kind of chasing that sense of accomplishment all the time.
yeah, and the outward trappings of being so successful are, they they sort of belie the internal experience, and
Yeah,
so he doesn't necessarily feel that he's that successful, right? And he doesn't,
exactly.
and so, but everybody treats him like he is, and so he's like, and that can really make it hard to address that gap that we talked
Mhm.
about in the very beginning, right? He's got this internal experience of not being, but everybody thinks you're this thing over here, and I feel like this thing over here, and I feel like I like that everybody thinks that I'm like this. And if I tell people that no, this is really my experience, then this is a bubble that's going to pop.
Yeah.
And I can't let that happen because this is my identity. And what I mean, being able to read about that in such an honest way, and it's, these men that agreed to do this thing are really courageous. And,
Absolutely.
in some
Yeah.
cases, like, you're even using their real names.
Mhm.
Not in all of them, and, you've but I don't know, man. I mean, I really admire them.
Yeah. Yeah, I really, really do too. I just can't say enough about um their willingness to be open, about their willingness to kind of reveal some pretty difficult pieces of themselves. So many of these stories that are in this book are not flattering to them.
Yeah.
That they're full, they're nuanced, they're complex, but often they don't look great, but they're these real kind of raw and authentic peeks into their experience. And Gideon, in particular, since we were talking about him, like his name has been changed, but he just let me, I mean, it's so rare that we get a peek into what the kind of insecurities that are roiling beneath the person who seems like he has everything going for him. And like I mean, it even like his chapter part of the book kind of opens with him feeling insecure about the size of his penis.
Right.
I mean, and that was a conversation. We had that conversation about 4 years into this 5-year process. He'd made an offhand comment about it once years ago, and we were like on a walk near his home, and I just said, "Can we talk about can we talk about how you feel about your penis?" And he
Wow.
was like, "Yep, let's go. What do you want to know?"
Amazing.
And so we did. But the other guys as well, like it's just really, really astonishing how much they kind of let me into their lives. And some of them, Ryan, who we'd spent some time talking about, the one whose father tried to teach him to fight and who later starts fighting when he's older. Um, he did use his real name. And he has been like, this is my story. I don't know how everyone's going to feel about it, but this is who I am. And my hope is that sharing it might have a positive impact on someone. And I want to kind of stand behind the fact that this is me. And so, yeah, I just can't say enough about how open and honest and vulnerable each of these guys are willing to be.
Yeah. And I mean, his case is that's really courageous. His story in particular is tough.
Yeah, he does some rough stuff.
And the fact that he's willing to do it, attach his own name to that, I don't know if I don't think I'd do it. I don't. We're all the richer for it. And but I mean, even just sharing the story under a pseudonym is really brave.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
yeah, I mean, we're really fortunate.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah,
really
I
fortunate that they
one
decided to let you do it, and we're really
yeah.
fortunate you decided to do it too.
Well, thank you. One last thing about that I'll share is, um, one of the men, one thing I did was I let them all see their stories in advance.
Yeah.
I just felt like I wanted to write it with so much intimacy that I felt like I couldn't publish it without them like being able to sit with it and kind of give me a sense of like whether I'd kind of captured it or not. And the first time I did it, what I did is I read it out loud to each of them. I went in
I
person and
can't
I read it
imagine
out
what this
loud to
session
them.
was like.
It was
I can't
intense.
imagine. I mean, that takes balls. It takes balls to do that, to decide to do it, and to listen to it on all sides.
Yeah.
There's some masculinity happening in that room right there.
It was intense. But one of them, there was one scene that's particularly rough, and he was like, the first time I read it out loud to him, he was like, I don't know if I can do this. Like this is after we'd spent years doing all these interviews, spending all this time together, me following him through so much of his life, and he just had this visceral reaction to it. He was like, "It's all true. Like everything you just read happened, but like something about it was just really tough."
Yeah.
And then he came back to me a couple weeks later. We didn't talk for a couple weeks, and he said, "Like I'm good. Like don't change a thing. Like I'm totally fine." And this was one of the men who's a parent, and what he said was, the thought of my child reading this when they are 15 years old and knowing that this is me feels absolutely terrifying, like
Yeah.
terrifying.
Yeah.
But the thought of my child reading this when they are 40 and I am an old man and they have now gone through a lot of stuff in their own lives and they have this like window into who their father was and is and all of the things that shaped me. That actually feels really nice, like to be known by them in that way. And so he didn't ask me to change a thing. And yeah, I feel just cannot say enough about like the level of vulnerability and courage that each of these guys had in sharing this way.
We should all have a journalist follow us around for 5 years
I do kind of
and
believe
write
that
our
sometimes.
story
Like,
so that our sons can read it when we're 80. And maybe AI will be able to
I
do
do
that
think
stuff.
we might be better off for it. There's just something powerful. Everyone's story is fascinating. Like
Yeah.
everyone's story, if you dig deep enough, like there's some interesting stuff there. And I think that it's a really powerful thing to have your story told and to be able to like more fully understand the stories of people you know and love.
I think that's absolutely true. I always love to end these conversations with more or less the same question of everybody. And that is, if there's one principle that every parent listening might live by to guide them as they raise excellent men, what principle would you come up with?
Yeah. Um, I don't know if this counts as a principle or not, but the two things that I try to hold on to all the time are just empathy and curiosity. Just trying to as much, and again, it's tough with a 2.5-year-old to like fully like empathize with what's going on in his little brain. But trying to, I can at times it can be easy to get pulled into power struggles and
Oh yeah.
we're gonna do this and we're gonna do this because I said so. And while you want, those firm boundaries, you want those clear like sets of expectations. I think that also like allowing yourself to try to understand as best as you can, like to the best of like the limits of your own empathy or curiosity,
Yeah.
what's going on and that is making your kid, pitch the fit that they're pitching or do whatever it is that they're doing. And if you can just even the attempt to understand, even the attempt to um try to enter into their experience ever so briefly, I think can allow you to engage with them in a way that is a little bit more just kind of open to kind of the full reality of their experience and the fact that like they are a full complex human being just as we are, even though they're still in formation, even though so much of kind of the way their brains work is not ideal, like that they are having full rich experiences just as we are at every moment of every day, and trying to kind of understand those experiences the best you can in the moment, I think serves you well.
I love that principle. I think it's great. It definitely qualifies, and I think I mean it really is. The book also reminds us that one of the most important gifts that we can give our boys is that gift of being seen and of being
Yeah.
known,
Hmm.
right? And that
Yeah.
they always have this place. They always have this place, no matter what. They always have this place. It is a safe place to come and, show yourself with all your faults. And if you do
Yeah.
nothing
Yeah.
else as a parent of a boy, that's what you want to be doing.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely. Yeah.
you don't have to wait for crises to start those
No.
conversations, right? You start. It's not even. I mean, it's about how you even react when
Mm.
they throw a fit. Like
Yeah.
you can throw a fit if you want. Like I get it. It's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Please don't hit people. Please don't call me that. Let's set some boundaries to this. But man,
Sure.
fits are you gotta fits are part of learning how to deal with strong emotions. That's great.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with all of that. Yeah.
Well, Jordan, thank you so much for joining us today. It has been an absolute privilege to talk to you, and thank you for the book as well.
Thank you so much, Sean. Yeah, really, really love this conversation, and so admire and appreciate the work that you're doing, and was grateful to have the chance to talk.
Thanks a ton. If you found today's deep dive into American men helpful, please pick up a copy of Jordan's book, and don't forget to like and subscribe to us and leave a review. More than just about anything, the reviews really help other people find the show. My name is Sean Dawson, and thank you for joining us. And remember, you are a great parent.
Raising Men is produced by Phil Hernandez. This episode was edited by Ralph Tolentino.